I don't think there is any problem with understanding the gospel reading on this Sunday. A man who owed a great amount of money was put before the king and requested to pay it back. He couldn't, so he begged the Lord to release him, or at least to give him time to pay it back. The good Lord not only didn't request payment back, but forgave him everything. So what does this fellow do? He goes to one of his own debtors and starts beating him up for a small amount. Of course, all his friends heard about this and came and told the king what had happened, who then had this slave put before him and delivered to him a comment: "I forgave thee everything that you ever owed," which was a lot. Why can't you forgive this man for the small amount that he owes you? And thus this person lost his soul. When it says he was delivered up to the tormentors, in other words, into the place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Many Holy Fathers say that thankfulness is one of the greatest virtues we can ever acquire. And you know, it's easy to talk about it, and it's easy to come and say, "Lord, I thank thee for all these things." But then when you look at the world, and you look at the horrors that are occurring around the world, you think, of what use is my thankfulness, given that these people are suffering so much? When I look at my own life, it's not really that bad. It's not really that bad. I'm not being bombed, not being murdered, stoned, attacked, or anything like that, like half the world is at the moment. Therefore, our duty as one of our main duties as Orthodox Christians in a land like this is to indeed be thankful to the Lord, but as our spiritual father taught, bring forth fruit. Do something to show your thankfulness. Do something. You know, there are thousands of people out there that seek the truth. And a lot of them suffer on account of this. They become cynical. They joke about godly things. We call it blasphemy. And all sorts of things like that. And the reason is because their heart wants the Creator, but nobody is helping them to find the Creator. So what? We were displaced from our homelands to bring others to the light of Christ. And you know, there are those who truly are seeking and are asking you very, very complex questions about the faith. That means they are really thinking about it. As I've said to you once before, you need to know how to answer that. You need to know how to answer that. When we say that we eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, can you imagine somebody hearing that for the first time in their lives, what would they think? Oh, this is some sort of symbol, some sort of ritual, something like that. But it's not. It's not. It's a reality. And it occurs in every Orthodox church, whether it's in a small dwelling like this, whether it's in a cave or a great, glorious cathedral. It occurs. And through that, eating of the flesh of the Son of Man and drinking his blood, we are supposed to make that effort to push out of our hearts all those things which cause us disquiet, family squabbles, hatred, deceit, stealing, beating, maybe even murder in some respects. Yeah, we've had people here that have come and have had murder. You know, all these sorts of things. The Lord is willing to forgive all of that as long as that person repents, becomes thankful, and starts to do something to show that he belongs to Christ, or she belongs to Christ. Those of you who came earlier witnessed a short service called the making of a catechumen. I think you probably know that in the early church, when St. Constantine freed the Christians, thousands upon thousands of people flooded in to the church wanting to become members. A special place was assigned for them just near the door where they stood, and those same sort of prayers that we read today were read over them. And usually someone was given a job to look after them, to teach them, and to explain to them any problems or any issues that they had. When they were ready, they came for baptism and chrismation, the gaining of the Holy Spirit. Which, by the way, cannot be taken away. Cannot be taken away. You can't unbaptize somebody. In a few moments you will hear me saying that catechumens should depart. You know, a lot of parishes today have actually left that part out. Because they say, oh, there's no more catechumens today, and it would be very rude to throw these people out. In earlier days, they had muscular monks throw out the catechumens. They're strong. Anyone who's been to Mount Athos will see that in the corner here and there is weights for bodybuilding, so that they are strong and able to kick out those who come there in trouble. The reason that the catechumens were asked to leave was because some of them were so unready yet that that mystery could have undone in them the inspiration that they had gained in order to become part of the church, because it's a very awesome mystery. And so they were only allowed into that part once they were ready. Our spiritual father said, when he does that, when he turns around and says, all catechumens depart, he looks at the people and he sees that 90% of them are catechumens. Their heart's not praying. They're not in the surface, they're thinking about something else. The catechumens. Therefore, from the spiritual level, we do not remove those sorts of things. Just as in the preparing of the cross, we do not remove the verse that says, give victory over all enemies to Christ's loving emperors. Because Christ's loving emperors have been, are, and will be, and most of you will see that in your lives at least once. Not democracy or any of these political isms or anything like that. You see, when you have an emperor, once a person has used up all the legal channels available to him, he can do what this man has done. Go before the emperor, fall down and beg forgiveness. If that emperor is God-loving, God-fearing, he will forgive him despite what the law might say. Because quite often the law, as they say, is an ass. And I think you yourself have experienced legal things which you know are wrong, and those dealing with you know that they are wrong, but they stick to it religiously to be politically correct. One of the big things today is calling somebody black or yellow or transvestite or something like that. Puts people in jail. I wonder what these people talk about in private. I came across an exquisite Russian serialized film about a Jewish family from the 1850s all the way up to the 1950s. And indeed, up until 1917, they had the most fantastic life. Even in a village, there was everything. Everything. There was beauty all around, there was freedom. One thing that was scary was that they showed them in the synagogue where the men were. And the men read from the Psalter, the same sort of prayers that we read, then discussed what to do. One of the Russian politicians I'll think of his name in a moment, was shot and his home blown up. The people that did it were Jewish revolutionaries. And so there came out a call to sort of push people from there away. And the Jewish rabbis said, so, you want us to exchange prayer and all for a revolution? Because the young kids in those days, not sufficiently hardened in the truth, were ready to do that. And as you know yourself, that revolution, which was actually a revolt against God, Stadipin was the politician that was killed. Stadipin. that was a revolution against God, led by the fallen angel. It was almost like a last stance. Many people thought that it was. But look, he was defeated and Christ still reigns. But there will come a time when that evil spirit will bring forth a substitute for Christ. He will perform fake miracles. He will be very beautiful, very well educated, immaculate in every possible way, and capture most of the world. People who are not doing spiritual life easily fall for that. Easily. But if you are leading a spiritual life and watching very closely what's going on inside of you, will not fall for that, but instead put up against the wall and shot. Become a martyr. That's the way it works. And these are not my words, but the words of God-bearing fathers from several centuries ago, and including some recent ones. Those of you who have been to Mount Athos, in one of the monasteries, there is a massive tapestry, not a tapestry, a fresco. It's about half the size of this chapel, showing a war with aeroplanes and guns and cannons and all sorts of things, which was painted about 400 years ago, when the Germans took over Greece and came and saw that. They were stupefied. How did you know this was going to happen? How did you know this was going to happen? So you see, those sorts of things we are not to take lightly, but to examine them from what the Holy Fathers and Mothers say. And if there is agreement between them about that, and if there is tradition in the church behind that, then chances are you will know how to escape those dark days which might befall us at any time. We have today the leave-taking of the Feast of the Mother of God's Dormition, a beautiful feast, who was of such holiness that her whole body was taken up into heaven as well as her soul. But unlike what Catholics, Protestants believe, she was not born immaculate or special or anything like that. She obtained virtue by her own struggles. By her own struggles. Because if she was born immaculate, then she would have been another race to us. That means we haven't been saved. She was born as one of us, subject to the same passions that we have, but she didn't give in. Followed the Lord's commandments to the letter. And it was as if the commandments are wiped away, because here is somebody who's done them all. That's it, it's fulfilled. Christ comes, gives us the new life, the new commandments, the Beatitudes, Holy Communion, and all such things. Fill in the details for yourself. Know the history of this. Be ready to talk to anybody who asks. And that will be your fruit bearing in this land of plenty. So far, anyway, plenty. And may the Lord help us in this struggle and open our minds to know where to look and how to understand these sorts of things. Most of all, how to do them in our lives, because that is by which people learn the most from us.